Hi everyone. Excited to have Jeff Stern, who is the president of True Media Networks, a company, analytics company that works with every baseball club you guys know. So Jeff is the president, and Jeff, I'll head it to you.
Sure. Thanks for the intro. And almost every right now we work with 26 of the Major League Baseball teams, so that's very exciting to us. Yeah, I'm one of the founders of the company. Been doing this now. We've been working since 2010 with Major League teams. Shortly thereafter, expanded to football, expanded to soccer. We also do rugby and cricket now. And I think what's maybe, I guess, just to give people a sense of what True Media does that's a little bit different than the common sort of sports analytics stuff is we're a little bit less of a modeling company, and we're really a data warehousing and reporting platform company. So we kind of like to refer to ourselves as unopinionated. We're trying to make sure that whatever question our customers want to ask, preparing for their advanced scouting tasks, their player development tasks, comparing players or anything else, when they want to find that video and that data, they're able to set up the system to get the answers that they want, which can include data they get from the leagues, data they get from other vendors, data they put into the system themselves. We are trying to make sure that a very wide breadth of users, that doesn't need SQL knowledge, doesn't need to know how to program in R, can get very data-focused answers and connect it all to video.
Okay, so tell me a little bit how it's all started.
Sure. So, in 2008, Major League Baseball got the PitchFX system in partnership with SportVision kind of fully rolled out. They had gotten some parks rolled out a few years before that. And that was the first system that tracked the full three-dimensional trajectory of every pitch thrown in Major League Baseball. And they, released that data onto their MLB at Bat app, and people could see, these pitch trajectories and curves that each pitch had. But MLB didn't do anything to aggregate that. So just being kind of a bit of a data nerd, baseball data nerd, software engineer, it just looked like interesting data to play with. So I and many other people did this and went in different directions. A lot of them work for major league clubs now. Just started scraping this data and seeing what we could do with it. And, my take was to kind of put it in a warehouse, aggregate it, and do a lot of visualizations that could answer questions in aggregate. Where does this pitcher typically throw? Where does this batter typically succeed or fail? And putting heat maps and stuff. And one of the first kind of compelling examples that came out of that was Mariano Rivera. And he was just incredibly consistent. If he was facing a left-handed batter and it was 0 strikes or 1 strike, he would always jam them inside with his cutter. And then as soon as it went to 2 strikes, it was, clear as day in the heat maps, 50% continuing to try and break their bat inside with the cutter and 50% trying to get them to chase outside. And, there were more stories like that, pitchers who were less predictable, but we were able in the original heat maps to kind of reproduce a lot of what scouts knew. And when we could get the same answers for the players they studied, that gave them confidence in the players that hadn't studied as much.
Okay, yeah, so going back to your roots, you mentioned that you started scraping data, playing around with it. Have you had an idea, did you know that all of these teams are not using this data in any useful way?
I didn't. I thought my background, so I was working for a company called BBN Technologies, which was a DARPA researcher company, but I wasn't in any of the security clearance oriented stuff. I was in a commercialization department. So the group I was in was trying to take their speech recognition patents and technology and get that out broadly to the consumer market. And, so we would do speech recognition on podcasts and other videos and stuff, make that searchable. And so I had a lot of connections more in the media space at the time. And so I was kind of expecting this was going to be more of a tool that could help broadcasts, and you'd see like NESN local to me, because I'm from the Boston area, would always have the Amica pitch sound. Oops, my cat may make an appearance in a moment.
No problem.
We'll see. Anyway, so I actually kind of thought teams were maybe a little more advanced than it turned out they were in 2010. Shoot, there he goes. We'll see how he does. But so I didn't really know exactly what that framework would look like. But from my work in sort of my normal full-time job, I did know Rafe Anderson, CEO with the company and kind of the co-founder with me. had worked at Fenway Sports Group, which was kind of the marketing arm of the Red Sox, and he had went off to kind of start his own business. And so having known him, I reached out to him, told him what I was doing. He said, it's really cool because of his connections at the Red Sox. We got a meeting with Jed Hoyer, who was an assistant GM at the Red Sox at the time, pretty quickly. Just went down, met them at a bar outside of Fenway. He had a couple other people from the front office come in. And what happened is about a week later, he became the GM of the Padres. And so it was actually the Padres who became our first customer in 2010.
Okay, this is, folks, how you do business without intentionally doing sales. You just provide value.
Yeah, we don't do, I mean, because we're entirely enterprise, because we work with groups that have kind of the data rights to the data already, which makes it a pretty small set. It's mostly word of mouth. I mean, the big sort of jump for us, so all of that I've described so far was a complete part-time gig. And then going into 2011, we pitched ESPN. And at this time, Bloomberg Sports was making a big push to have their thing. They were, promoting it as fantasy, but they were also making a system for front offices and trying to make it, seem like their financials terminal. And I was pretty worried, I'm doing this on the side that, get crushed by this. But anyway, we went into ESPN to bid on it. They had an existing provider. They were evaluating Bloomberg and they were evaluating us, and, 20, 25 people in this huge conference room in Bristol, not letting them know that, me and Rafe are kind of doing this as a part-time gig. And yeah, we got the deal. Their researchers really liked it. And then sort of how we fell into new business. So that was February of 2011. And, we started the baseball season. Everything was going well in April. And then in May, they were like, so how about football? It was like, great. I love football. The Patriots were kind of beginning their dynasty. Around then, I was following it constantly. It was like, great, let's do football. And so we did that. And many, many years later, or actually not even that many years later, so in doing football, we ended up connecting with the Jaguars, who the son of Shad Khan, Tony Khan, for the Jaguars, was heavily involved in their analytics, really loved what we were doing. We connected because he had some connections with the HSAC, Harvard Sports Group. And he invested pretty shortly thereafter in 2013, and then in 2014 bought everybody else out, just wanted to kind of own it, and we've been running, and Tony's fantastic ever since. So that was a big means of expansion. But kind of many years later down than that too, we started working one by one with different NFL teams. But eventually we got a deal as part of the NFL's league-wide deal to distribute data rights with Genius Sports. We partnered with them to deliver things to all 32 NFL teams. So that was a big expansion there. Going back to ESPN, after we did football for them the fall of 2011, the 2012 Euros were coming up in soccer, and they were like, can you do soccer? I didn't know soccer as well, but it was like, sure, we can figure this out. Let's do it. And so we did soccer, and, we managed to do a good enough job that the company was called Opta at the time, became Perform, then became Stats Perform. But they really liked what we were doing, and it was only for ESPN at the time. It was like, well, can we partner and sell this to pro teams? And so that's now a co-branded product called Provision that we released out. Baseball was a bit more organic. As we worked with teams, every year the staff is shuffling, and especially, maybe around 2015, we started getting used by much broader groups in the organization, especially a lot as video search. So players would use it, minor league interns, player development coaches, and everybody. And it pretty quickly permeated around the league. People would switch jobs and then ask, hey, do you have True Media? And, so we were able to get a lot of business that way. In fact, one time we got a voicemail cold call from a player who had been traded, and his new team didn't have it. And he was just cold call, like, how do we get this? I was like, okay, great. Well, connect us with your front office and we will get you set up. And we did.
Okay, so what sports right now? Football, soccer, baseball?
And so, again, mostly the organic. We also do cricket and rugby. And so that came from working. So Opta was a British company. And so, they knew we did baseball. We had been successfully doing soccer with them. And so they said, can you do rugby? I'm sorry, not rugby. Can you do cricket? The first thing about cricket. And I said, no problem. And they sent over what was kind of the equivalent of a minor league cricket player. And we got our company together, which is a remote company, but we had everybody come up by Boston, rented out an indoor soccer facility. And he just taught us cricket, and we used a rubber ball because the actual real cricket ball looks insanely dangerous to me, but he taught us with a nice soft rubber ball, and we learned cricket and did that. And then Ben McCreel, who was kind of our main contact there, actually ended up leaving Stats Perform, went to a company called Oval Analytics and asked if we could basically do the same thing for rugby. And so we got into rugby in that way as well.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit, expand and are you a database for all of these sports or what exactly? You've mentioned it a little bit, right? But I know the Oval Insights and I know those companies providing a data analytics to the teams and stats and etc. What are you doing the different, right? What's that these companies, why they were interested in what you do, since it looks a little bit competitive.
So, yeah, I don't really see it. I mean, they're obviously, essentially data has to be usable to be useful. And so we are providing that kind of usable layer on top of it. So Oval, Stats Perform, Major League Baseball, the NFL with NGS, they all provide tons of fantastic data, in most cases very well connected to video, but not a lot of tools that let you build sort of the reports that you want to get in, to actually really make use of that data. So we are kind of a combination of a custom-built data warehouse that makes it very easy to filter, split, create your own statistics, and then a reporting layer that you could sort of look at as like a very sport-specific customized Tableau-style platform to allow people to build out their own pages, build out their own reports, and ask whatever questions of the data they want without needing, each employee to know how to use SQL, to know how to use R, and to do this sort of scripting. We're making it so the players themselves are answering very sort of numerate, data-oriented questions, but they're doing it themselves in an easy-to-use interface, connecting it to video. And we're that kind of glue between the users who have the sports knowledge and the data interest, but not the data scientist skill set.
So can we say that you're basically a front end of data? So you have a warehouse, but your whole mission is to basically be front end that every user could use it.
Yep, yeah, absolutely. We want to be the place where they interact with the data.
Okay, and have you thought about being a B2C focused as well? Since you have a lot of data, a lot of sport fans, it's perfect.
Yeah. So it's certainly interesting. I would say our warehouse is it works for an enterprise workflow because these enterprises value using the data a lot, but we are somewhat expensive to run per query from a compute perspective. And there's also a lot of just who owns the data. So there are some cases where we have an ability to sublicense data. College baseball is a big one. In some cases related to football data. Market combines a lot of data rights challenges and a lot of cost scaling challenges.
Yeah, the rights, I think that's the tough. So to clarify, you do not own the data, right? Most of the times, you just use it.
Most of the time, we don't own the data. There are certain sets of data we either own directly or own sublicense rights to, but most of the data we work with is league-owned data that we don't own.
Okay, yeah. So tell me a little bit about AI. Are you implementing AI into your systems, and is there any future?
Is there a future in AI? I think that's going to catch on. I think it's going to be a thing. There's lots of different types of AI. So, I mean, at the simplest level, some of the modeling we do, right? So if you take baseball examples, we were early in doing what's sort of referred to as expected stats, understanding the expected slugging percentage, those kind of things of a batted ball giving its exit data. Now, those aren't AI in like a ChatGPT sense, but they're still like a machine learning type of. As far as, there's some very cool demos that have a more chat style search. That's not something we do right now because our users, ESPN's our biggest customer, and they never want to get anything wrong. It's incredibly important to them that whatever number gets spit out of our system is correct. And so, when the AI is trying to figure out what a user means by having a very natural language interface to the question, sometimes they're going to get that wrong. And so while ours, is not quite as convenient, has a little bit more of a learning curve, the user is setting every filter and making sure they are very precisely asking the question. So, that dampens it a little bit. The other thing I'd say is that I think AI is absolutely amazing at obtaining proficiency that's maybe in the top 10 to 25% of a field and summarizing it and doing it really fast. But because we work sort of with these enterprise users, we're working with people who are in the top 1% of their field, right? This is the scout, the head advanced scout for a Major League Baseball team or something, and they are preparing something where there's not much training examples. They're one of 30 people in the world that do this particular thing, and they are very precise about it and very, very good at it. And so it's a higher bar for AI to maybe replicate that work, but I definitely see a ton of value for it in kind of the B2C. And also even in some of maybe the scouting, there's a lot of biomechanics data coming out now, right? Major League Baseball tracks the full skeleton of the batter and pitcher at something like 300 frames a second now. And, that information, I'm sure, tells you something about injury risk, tells you something about, aging curves. We haven't necessarily perfected those kind of things, but you can definitely see a lot of good AI use cases coming out of that kind of data.
Yeah. It's crazy, and it could cover a lot of things in future.
I certainly think it will.
Okay, yeah. So then the next part of what I'm interested in. So you've been working with college level and pro teams, right? This is your main focus. So from your experience, have you seen the differences in how they use data on different levels?
But like how a college team might differ from a pro team using data?
Mhm.
Yeah, well, so, each sport's going to be a little bit different, but I mean, a Major League Baseball organization is basically running a small software startup at this point. You'll have potentially data science teams that can be 10, 20 people large, software engineering teams that might be 5 to 10 people large, and, they are trying to gain every edge, right? Like, sort of the fundamental point of like Moneyball is essentially find some inefficiency that's still out there and exploit it for as long as you can. And so, when you pay players hundreds of millions of dollars, paying a couple extra software engineers or data scientists to maybe find an inefficiency that gets you a little bit of a better contract is a race you're mostly going to participate in. College teams are not that big. They actually, I mean, the staff they have is excellent and they compensate that staff well, but it's orders of magnitude smaller in staff. They don't have a software engineering group. Some of them at the very highest levels of conferences might have some full-time analytics people. Most of them are probably asking students to participate in some of that work. So, the colleges use it more like, I guess, coaches, and that is what they are staffed with. The pro teams use it across the whole spectrum of coaches, but also analysts and systems developers.
Okay, so in terms of the data, let's say you cover a lot of sports. What are the sports like from the one you cover, most advanced ones?
I mean, so certainly the usage is most engaged in baseball, right? I mean, you would never hear a baseball manager say something like they want to trust their gut and who cares what the data says, right? That's not a mindset that exists for anyone working in Major League Baseball at all. So everyone is bought into the idea that, they need to make data-oriented decisions. They need to back up what they're doing with data, and that causes them to seek deeper and deeper into the data. And each year Major League Baseball does a great job working with the teams and other vendors and the parks and stuff and getting more and more stuff installed. They're obviously, I guess I'd say, the most advanced from a use case. But, I mean, the NFL has had NGS running, which is sensors in the shoulder pads of the players, and they've had that running in every game since 2015. So they get, the orientation of the player from their shoulder pads. They get, everything. They instrumented the ball a year or two later. So there's an enormous amount of data and an enormous wealth of information still available there. There's not quite as much desire to use it, and there's probably many reasons for that. Some is just the staffing. But some of it is also, they don't have a minor league system, so they only need to review college data for the perspective of a draft. They don't need to make those players better. And they play 1/10 the number of games. So if I want to evaluate a center fielder in baseball, I need an advanced tool to help me filter down to look at the 50 interesting plays the center fielder made and not the 600 balls that went to him, or I just will lose patience watching all that video. But I can watch the 60 punt returns an NFL player has, and I get a lot of information from that video. And potentially a lot of information it's in the data, but it's very hard to extract from the data because 22 people are interacting with each other, potentially on a scheme that's not even known to you. with these roles. Baseball's mostly head-to-head matchups. The pitcher throws a pitch with no other sort of influence. The batter is reacting to that one pitch. The fielder is reacting to where that ball was hit. And it can be broken down into very individualized accomplishments in a way that is much harder in the NFL. And soccer is similar. And then on soccer, you add to the fact that it's not even in plays. It's a continuous sport. So, you know, it's flowing throughout all of these transitions that you need to manage. Yeah, I don't know that the data itself is more advanced in baseball. All of these leagues, the NBA is adding skeletal data too, but the use of it in every decision is certainly furthest along in baseball.
Let's think about the future. Like, do you see more data coming into the team? So there is like too much data at this point, and actually having more data will make it useless. Like, what is the future you see?
I would not say having more data will make it useless. You asked a question about AI before, and the big secret of why AI, I mean, not secret, obviously, but, you know, the thing that's made AI turn to be really useful is enough data, right? AI needs to see, you know, thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of pictures of a cat before it figures out what a cat looks like. But once it has that, it really knows what a cat looks like, and it does amazing things. So, I mean, all of this data will allow AI systems to evaluate, you know, probably a lot amateur players and other things, and have people, to take a step back, the biggest thing you want to do when you're evaluating data is learn as much as you can, as fast as you can. And so back in the day, if somebody hit a double, that was all that we learned. And then later they started tracking the exit velocity of that double. And so now we could learn, well, okay, this was a double and this was a flyout, but both of them were hit about the same. So now from that one pitch of baseball, I've learned more because I know the exit velocity, launch angle, and other things. And then you start to get, well, now I know the spin that was on the ball. I know how good a pitch it was. I know, you know, I have a swing decision metric for whether the batter should have even swung at it. And I have a pitch value. I have a batted ball value. I have a defensive value. I have, you know, now you can trace where the ball actually hits off the bat. So a pitcher throwing a changeup, well, that's designed to cause the batter to swing in front of it, so we can actually measure on every foul. Was this a good foul or a bad foul? A good foul on a changeup would be off the end of the bat. It means the batter swung in front of it. A bad foul might be them still being on it, but they, you know, fouled it off the top or bottom of the bat because they just didn't quite line it up right. But if it's off the end of the bat, the pitcher's done what he meant to do, and his pitch is actually tricking the batter in a more significant way. So more data is going to allow people to learn things faster from smaller amounts. More data points per pitch will allow you to learn more from a smaller number of pitches, which is going to give teams an advantage.
Yeah, agreed. You know, the question here is that, like you said, yeah, more data will give you ability to learn more. But the other question, you know, how to say it correctly, if let's say the data, like you could have million different data points, right? How actually, what is the percentage of, let's say, a player put in hand and, you know, 45 degrees, I don't know, like when he's throwing the ball, what is the actual percentage that leads of this data point to the real result? You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, and that's even an interesting example because we've gotten enough data where, you know, pitching coaches are tweaking with just slight grip changes that change the seam orientation, change the way the wake will move. There's a whole seam shifted wake area of research on how that'll move through. So very small adjustments to the grip can lead to adjustments in what percent of the different spin, top spin, side spin, gyro spin, affect the ball and can make differences that they're tweaking. So, you know, and then again, back to AI, right? Even if there's too much data for a regular person to sift through because you've given it 1 million data points per pitch, an AI system will take that and figure out where the signal is and throw out the noise once it has enough data.
Yeah, agree, 100%. So, all right, Jeff, at the end, I'd like to ask you, you know, a blitz.
Okay, sure.
What is your favorite sport
To play tennis.
to watch?
To watch? You know, I mean, I was kind of a homer and a fair weather fan, although it's fun to see the Patriots doing again. But I probably most enjoyed the Patriots run under Brady there.
Okay, who is your favorite athlete?
Pedro Martinez, no question. The whole reason the company exists is just because I loved watching Pedro pitch when I was in college.
Sorry, is that a baseball player?
Yes. Pedro was especially dominant for the Red Sox like 99 and 2000. when I was going to a lot of games, but then several years later too, yeah.
Okay, what is the favorite part of your work?
I mean, I guess getting to realize how it's used, right? I mean, the good thing about being able to work in sports is just that it's kind of a fun topic, and to see it actually get used, get comments from teams, as they're winning championships and those kind of things is a lot of fun.
What is the worst part of your job?
I mean, like any job, there's a lot of small things you still gotta get right? Adjusting the way something displays on the site. There's just being a small company and still being involved, there's a lot of tasks that you're like, oh man, I mean, I get that it still needs to be done, but they just are sort of, not the really interesting and glamorous aspects, but you still gotta put a full product together that has everything, and that can get to be a large task list at times.
Yeah, yeah, like some tests that are repetitive tasks, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of data cleaning in what we do. So, every now and then somebody might say that, we haven't cleaned the 1934 doubleheader timestamps correctly and we're getting a streak wrong for all historical stats. And it's like, I mean, I get it. We want to get those streaks right and we want to report all the right interesting facts. But now I'm going through cleaning, game start times from the 90s, and it's not the most interesting task I could be doing.
Okay, yeah, I got you. All right, Jeff. So the last one, not about the blitz, but what one advice would you give to someone who wants to enter sport tech?
So there's enough publicly published data that instead of just applying, do a project, because that's really the only thing that will make your resume stand out. NBA publishes a ton of data through Baseball Savant. The NFL runs what they call the Big Data Bowl, where they give a ton of really great data, and they actually have competitions. The winners of those competitions usually are getting job offers from NFL teams. So it's find publicly available data or these kind of competitions and do something with it. College, if your college is a customer of ours, you can generally get access to that type of stuff and do projects as like a baseball team manager or those kind of things. So it's, don't just apply and assume the strength of your other work is going to stand out, because there's just too many smart people in the world. But do something with the data and have a project to show.
Okay, yeah, Jeff, it was nice to meet you. Tell me a little bit, since you're a smart company, do you have some page or somewhere where everyone who's listening to us, if they would like to follow you, where is it possible?
Man, I'm so bad at marketing and social media and those kind of things. We do have, I believe, an X handle at True Media Sports. TrueMediaNetworks.com is our website. Probably hasn't been updated in quite some time, because our marketing strategy is mostly just through networking of customers. Yeah, I would say that X handle is probably where we put things out the most. There's probably some more information on our website that I really should double check at some point.
Jeff, it was great to have you. Interesting discussion. I'd love to wish you guys, I don't know what else could you do. You already got every team in every league, but just keep going.
All right, I appreciate it. Very nice to meet you as well, and thank you.
Thank you.